Hi, Larry K, ShadowAnyone.com. Today I'm going to teach you two things. Number one, I'm going to teach you a phrase that you can use when you want to call the cops, but you're not so sure what should I say, And number two, I'm going to teach you how to talk to the police in a way that gets you the results that you want. So, right off the bat, you know the situation. You see something that's odd to you or weird, it's out of place, a guy hanging out near a convenience store or something. You want to call the cops, but you don't want to cast disparaging remarks at this guy or accuse him of anything. He really hasn't done anything yet. What do you do? How do you call this in? It's simple. You use the phrase suspicious person. I'd like to report a suspicious person. You're not saying that they're doing anything wrong. You're talking strictly about, it just seems out of place to me. Now, sometimes the dispatcher, when you call the police, will ask you what seems suspicious to you about this person. A lot of times they won't, but sometimes they will. Be prepared if you get that question. You say, well, he's been there for 10 minutes. He doesn't seem to have any legitimate business. Or, there's no license plate on his car. That kind of something, whatever you think is making him suspicious to you. You can just say, he just seems to be loitering there. And that leads right into number two. How can you talk to the police in a way that gets you the results you want to get? The police are very predictable in a sense. They have certain types of runs and calls that they respond to, in certain ways that they respond, in certain ways they prioritize those runs. And if you can be clear to them about what you're calling about, it sets in practice, it sets in motion a very specific set of actions. So, for example, the previous example, suspicious person, loitering. Loitering is a word that they know. They can dispatch the police on loitering. It's a phrase they know. If you just call and you're like, well, I'm not, I was here earlier and I saw this guy and I'm not so sure about. See, a lot of that is lost. But it's very clear and concise to say, I'd like to report a suspicious person. Now, here's the key to talking to police in a way that gets you the results that you want. Learn what their signals or codes, their 10 codes are in your area, and find out what those mean. Now, I will caution you, for example, I'll give you a good example, 1048A. That might be a suspicious person. Now, I would never call the police and say, I want to report a 1048A. I would never talk to a police officer and say, hey, this guy got a 48A over there. You don't do that. But what is the English equivalent of their code? That means something. So if you say suspicious person, the dispatcher knows that's a 48A, and he or she will dispatch the police like that. You'll get that kind of response. So another example might be, an auto accident with no injuries. You can say, the police code for that is, say, a 10-4. So that's an auto accident with no injuries. So when you call, I'd like to report an auto accident with no injuries. That way you're not calling in and, hey, I'm out here and, I saw a couple of cars and they bumped into, I think they seem to be okay. I'm not so sure, forget that. You can call in very specifically. If you know what the codes are for your police department, use whatever that code stands for. Let's see, I'll give you another example here. Disturbance is a standard code that your police department has a code for that somewhere. And so if you look at the codes and you say, okay, a 1016 is a disturbance, you can call in, a disturbance or loud noise. But knowing those phrases is going to give you the words to use to the police that are going to have them respond and show up and deal with the situation in a very quick and precise manner. There's another little interesting thing you can do with this, and that's to use the words that are in the law. And specifically the law when the police write up a citation. So, for example, if you're driving behind somebody and you don't want to say necessarily that they're drunk, maybe they're sleepy or old or texting, you don't want to cast aspersions on this person, but you can call and say they're weaving within the lane. Because if that's what you see, of course, always tell the truth. But, if they're weaving back and forth, even if they're still in the lane, but you can tell something's not right, you can call in, I'd like to report in a vehicle that's weaving within the lanes, and that's a very specific thing that the police understand. Driving slow enough to impede the normal flow of traffic. Again, we all run into this. We're driving behind that person who must be texting. They're either texting or they're so drunk they're trying to be careful. When you're driving behind that person and you're not sure should you call them in as drunk or old or what, you can use the phrase, in my state, the phrase is, they're driving slow enough to impede the normal flow of traffic. And that they recognize as a specific offense, they understand what that means, and they respond accordingly. This is Larry K, shadowanyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.